Also, if you do not sleep for consecutive days in a row over time, you start losing the ability to produce a ideal for performance and longevity amount of testosterone. And the reason is, in layman's terms, is the body says, okay, we don't have the resources to have a lot of vitality here. We're tired, we're broken down, we need to have less testosterone, so we're not building as much muscle mass, and we're not trying to maintain such a powerful machine. We need to make everything smaller, weaker, slower, so that hopefully at some point we can get the resources to actually recover. But until then, we need a smaller body to recover.
Yeah.
So The Rock would be unable to make muscle gains. He would be shrinking, and he also would be having injuries all of the time.
Exactly.
Because he's got no growth hormone. The loss of the muscle mass because his testosterone will be chronically low. Now, he might have relatively high testosterone naturally, but no one naturally has high enough testosterone to look like that.
Yeah.
So he would be smaller in the first place were he natural.
And look at him in his 20s, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And I think, I'm not going to look it up, but I think he's got like 20 million followers. And that gym motivation that he posts in the morning, it's getting international likes, but he's not motivating the people that need to be motivated. He's marketing. He's selling an image. And that image is exactly what you're talking about the, I don't need to rest. But in reality, if he didn't, have $1 million to spend on his appearance every year and his performance, he would be very easy to kill. He'd probably be dead.
Yeah.
Right? He wouldn't be able to maintain a job that required a lot of hard work or mental acuity. He'd just be struggling to get through the day. And it's very confusing for people who aren't deeper into the fitness world, and he's their entry point, and they see, okay, so I need to start getting up at 4:30 a.m. to do these workouts, and then I'm going to go to my job, and then because I'm not a pussy, I'm going to work another 4 hours after work to start this other small business, because if I'm not an entrepreneur influencer, then I'm not cool in this generation, or I'm not studying it. And it just leads to nowhere.
Maybe you can get away with that if you're 19 for a little while, but it's not going to end where you want it to end.
No. And once you have aged, you can't unage yourself.
And to some degree, this is really intuitive. If a lot of people will just think back on their lives, I mean, how many times have you missed a night of sleep and then gotten hurt the next day? Or you had a really terrible, stressful week, you didn't sleep very well, and then that chronic shoulder pain that hasn't bothered you in a while, suddenly that's creeping back, right?
Yes.
And then, this whole phenomenon of daylight savings time, there's a lot of evidence to support that when you take an hour of sleep away from the population, it's like I believe it's exactly a 10% increase in car accidents, heart attacks, and maybe another mortality metric. But people aren't their best; they're going to get hurt more. And the same thing when we flip the clock the other way and people get an hour more of sleep, suddenly you have fewer heart attacks, you have fewer car accidents. I mean, it's not sexy to talk about sleep, but this is literally, if you want to build a house, this has got to be an essential part of your foundation. If you're trying to build a certain kind of body, or if you're even trying to live a certain kind of life and you're not sleeping, you are shortchanging yourself. I don't care what your goal is.
And I've spoken to people, in person or online for half a dozen sessions. They've spent $1,000 talking to me, and over and over and over say, well, are you getting sleep? I think you should address sleep. And they want to talk about drugs, or they want to talk about broccoli, or they want to talk about deadlifts. And they're trying to get a little bit leaner and they're trying to get a little bit stronger, or they're trying to stick to a diet. You know, when you start and it's not working and they just refuse to look at the sleep. When you start to have, as an example, and there are a lot of pieces to this with chronic lack of sleep, but just one specific piece, take the testosterone part. If you're walking around with relatively low testosterone all the time, and God forbid, disproportionately high estrogen as well, due to maybe the amount of sugar that you eat in your diet, you're going to have a shorter fuse. You're going to be more scatterbrained. You're going to have less sense of well-being, and you're going to have way more cravings. And it makes it way harder to stick to a diet.
Well, you're not going to have as much willpower either. Your willpower stores get depleted.
100%. So it's like, why are you even going to do that if you're not going to prioritize sleep? But then, well, I'm going to stay up late and I'm going to meal prep and I'm going to. You got to relax. Like, the reason that all this happened in the first place was because of the chaos that entered your life, the balances that created. But I would rather those folks just have kept their money, spent it on their child, and have just slept, because that's what I told them the very first time we talked.
I have a supporting anecdote. I was feeling sick last week. You and I were supposed to meet. We didn't. I was feeling sick. And one of those nights, I took some NyQuil. I think I took a melatonin and some NyQuil because I was like, you know, my body's depleted. I'm not even trying to wake up. I'm going to put myself down. And I woke up the next morning. I looked at my sleep tracker and I got 0 deep sleep, despite feeling like I felt like I had just slept all night. Like, I'd slept pretty well. But I really believe that those drugs in my system prevented my body from doing its natural work while I was sleeping. And that was really interesting because, you know, there have been plenty of times when I've taken NyQuil and I felt groggy or just sort of out of it the next day. But I never accounted for the fact that maybe that drug had stolen my deep sleep for the night.
Caffeine can do that to people as well.
Yeah.
Especially when you're having caffeine like in the afternoon or evening. Caffeine has a half-life of about 12 hours. And we become very adjusted to it. So we're not usually aware of that. The majority of the effects of caffeine in someone drinking like 4 cups of coffee, the majority of the jolt that they feel initially is placebo.
Wow.
Which is fine. The majority of most stuff we're dealing with is placebo.
Yeah.
But that's one thing for people to check. And that's way more important than, I make sure all the TVs are off 4 hours. You got to relax, first of all. But that's something to look at before thinking about all of those little details. You know, do you drink a lot of caffeine? Same as, do you drink every night? If you drink every night and you're really happy, drink every night. But for someone looking at these issues, someone trying to make improvements, you drink every night, or you take a stimulant late in the day, that can diminish your sleep quality, even if you are falling asleep.
Happiness is really important, though. I've been sort of wrapping my mind around this idea that the 4 pillars of health are sleep, diet, exercise, and joy. And I don't know why I decided to come up with 4 pillars, but that's just, I've been thinking about life and I was like, these are the 4 pillars of health, because without
hold up tables.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah.
That's why I needed 4. That's hilarious.
4 is great when we're talking about bases.
Oh man.
Yeah.
But without any one of these things, right? Like, if your diet's messed up, if you're not sleeping, if you don't have exercise, or if you don't have joy, it's going to be very difficult for you to be healthy, in my opinion. And you might be able to let 3 of those legs slide a little bit, but you really need all 4. You need at least some work in all 4 to be your best.